So what are your five senses?
Ooh.
Whoever you can.
Wait, touch, smell, sight, hear, and taste!
What do you smell with?
Nose.
What do you hear with? What do you taste with?
Mouth!
What do you touch with?
Ear.
What do you see with?
Eyes.
What does your brain do? Someone answer.
Think!
It didn't really sound.
The nervous system. The nervous system consists of two main parts, the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system, which are the neurons that are not included in the brain and spinal cord. The neuron is a nerve cell that helps to transmit signals and relay information throughout the body. The cell body incorporates most of the organelles found in the neuron. The nucleus contains all of the genetic info for the cell. Dendrites are branch-like extensions protruding out from the cell body. These structures receive information from other cells or neurons and relay the information to the cell. Axons also project out from the cell body in electrical signals named action potentials. They carry away information from the cell body. At the posterior end of the axon is the axon terminal. These communicate with other cells. The myelin sheaths are made up of lipids and they speed up the transmission of action potentials. The spaces along the axon are the nodes of Ranvier. The space in between the neurons is the synaptic cleft, and where the neurons meet is the synapse. Once neurotransmitters are released, they cause a chain reaction, allowing for the activity to be continued. The brain. The brain is the control center of the nervous system. The main portion of the human brain is called the cerebrum. It is split into four parts: the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, the temporal lobe, and the occipital lobe. The cerebellum is located underneath of the cerebrum. The frontal lobe is responsible for smell, speech, intellectual function, and motor function. The parietal lobe is responsible for taste and for sensory function. The occipital lobe is responsible for vision, and the cerebellum is responsible for balance and coordination. Finally, the temporal lobe is responsible for hearing.
The brain. The cerebrum is the largest part of the brain and has a highly folded outer layer. It has two hemispheres that are connected by the corpus callosum. It is a band of axons that are deep in the central groove. The thalamus is the uppermost portion of the brain, which directs sensory signals to the specified regions of the cerebral cortex. The hypothalamus aids in the maintenance of homeostasis and controls hormone production. The midbrain is associated with visual and auditory information. The pons transmits information between the cerebral hemispheres and cerebellum. The medulla oblongata relays and controls information having to do with heart rate, respiration rate, and homeostatic activities. The cerebellum coordinates muscle action. It receives sensory impulses from many structures of the body. It plays a large role in rapid and ongoing muscle movement.
The spinal cord. The spinal cord is composed of both white and gray matter and is made up of nerve fiber bundles. The white matter of the spinal cord's job is to transmit information from the body's nervous system to the brain or vice versa. The gray matter is found towards the center of the spinal cord and is surrounded by the white matter. This section bridges communication between the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The dorsal root allows for the entrance of sensory neurons and is known as the posterior root. The ventral root or anterior root enables the exit of motor neurons from the spinal cord. Sensory information is transmitted into the spinal cord, while motor information is transmitted outwards.
The ear. The external part of the ear directs the sound vibrations into the ear. The auditory canal connects the external ear to the tympanic membrane. Vibrations cause the tympanic membrane to vibrate. The eustachian tube is an opening that leads to the throat and equalizes pressure on both sides of the tympanic membrane. The vibrations cause the tympanic membrane to move the three bones of the ear, otherwise known as the hammer, anvil, and stirrup. The cochlea, a coiled tube, consists of three fluid-filled chambers that are separated by membranes. The middle chamber contains the organ of Corti, or the organ of hearing. It sits on the bottom of the membrane in the cochlea, and it houses the hair cells. Vibrations make the hair cells activate an ion channel, which results in the release of neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters stimulate neurons in the auditory nerve, reach the auditory region of the brainstem, travel to the thalamus, and are interpreted into sounds by the auditory cortex.
The eye. Located at the back of the eye, the optic nerve enables visual information as action potentials to be carried to the thalamus. The retina, also towards the back of the eye, is responsible for receiving images formed by the lens, which is located towards the front of the eye. These images are carried to the optic nerve. The sclera is the white section surrounding the iris and provides structure and protection for the eye. The pupil, the opening to the eye's interior, is where light passes through after it first passes through the clear protective layer of the cornea. The pupil becomes larger or smaller depending on the intensity of light. The pigmented portion of the eye, known as the iris, controls these involuntary responses to light. Light then passes through the lens, which alters the contour of the lens to bend rays of incoming light after passing through the pupil.
Tastes and smells are perceived in a certain way because of specialized chemoreceptors. The taste sensory cortex is where taste signals are interpreted by the brain. Before the signals reach the brain, they are related in the thalamus and in the brainstem through the taste nervous pathways. These signals are then stimulated by chemicals that bind onto receptors in the taste buds located on the tongue. Similarly, the smell sensory cortex is where odor signals are interpreted. Signals received first must travel through olfactory nerve pathways to the olfactory bulb, part of the limbic system. These signals are stimulated by the binding of odor chemicals to receptors within the mucous lining of the olfactory epithelium. Finally, these signals are not only sent to the smell sensory cortex, but to the amygdala, another structure of the limbic system, which is a subsystem of the nervous system.